Welcome back to the news, everybody. Today we have an absolute banger of an episode because, well, Nvidia are pulling Nvidia shenanigans again, but their stock has went absolutely to and through the moon just in the last 24 hours. We've got token coming to WoW Classic, oh yes, but first, I've got to talk about the Embracer Group, and you may be like, who? What are you talking about? No, this is just a crazy corporate story. It's a fun quickie. So here's the TLDR of how Lars and his boys got absolutely screwed the night before their earnings, and why we got to see him on a sort of earnings Q&A looking just thoroughly like he'd been through it. So here's the deal. Dead Island 2, it was actually a big success for them. It sold over 2 million units in only a few months. Of course, they also bought Asmodee, who basically loads and loads of tabletop games within there. That brought in 13 billion krona. Happy. Sales are up to 3.5 billion, up 121%, which is great for them. Saints Row, yes, it was confirmed that Saints Row, that one, had a $100 million budget. There were no sales numbers provided. We can assume that they are bad. One of the funny things about their attempt post that scuffed launch to mend Saints Row, one of the very first things they mentioned was like, okay, yeah, bullet sponge enemies aren't fun. We get ya. So, hey, good luck to them, right? Now, part of that, though, is maybe why Deep Silver and several other brands have just been, like, merged into PlayOn, which I think is their rebranding of Koch Media. Anyway, the team at Volition are now working under Gearbox and heavily rebuilding Saints Row, if you were not sure what's going on there. So there will be more Saints Row. They also revealed they've got 14 notable new releases in the last fiscal year. 4 broke even, 2 performed above average. But you gotta realize that in a lot of businesses like this, it's about having cost-controlled losses and then letting your runs win, right? So, 80-20 principle, it's that kind of thing. That being said, 2 out of 14, kind of is violating the 80-20 principle, isn't it? But let's get to the big shock. Why Lars almost certainly, and I feel for him, he had a bad night. Right. They had a $2 billion deal that failed to materialize the night before their earnings call. It was, quote, a groundbreaking strategic partnership that is now seemingly up in the air, and it left them without a guaranteed income source of $2 billion. Yeah, like they said that late last night, a $2 billion contracted development deal with strategic partner surprisingly fell through. And like you do not see statements like that. It was surprisingly candid. Their stock went down 40%. There's a web Q&A with their CEO, Lars Wingfors, and you did have to feel for the guy. He did not look happy. He had a bad night. So it's a little bit of a crazy story. Like, he did say that it's a hard time for him to be bullish because he was talking about, we were doing a deal with people that we trust. And then it goes. Now, speaking of people that we trust, I think we've got to talk about Blizzard Entertainment. Yes, how are we going to line another wall on Bobby's yacht with gold, specifically WoW token gold, because that's the story. WoW Classic, right? It is the return to Monkey for the Warcraft brand to undo all the things that people didn't particularly like. And now, 3 expansions ahead, because WoW Token came in Warlords of Draenor. WoW Token is coming to Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Woohoo! Now, this is an interesting story because on one hand, a lot of people are quite angry about this for obvious reasons. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who have, let's just say, an alternative opinion in a way that I think is, it is interesting. So there's stuff to get into. Now, the purpose of WoW Token is still what it is, right? It is to allow somebody who has more IRL money than time to trade some of their IRL money into another player's time in the form of getting a whole bunch of gold. So if you are grinding forever in WoW Classic, earning some gold, playing the markets, you can pay for your World of Warcraft sub with WoW Token, and on the other side of that deal is somebody who just gets to buy your gold and have it in the game. And to facilitate this service, Blizzard do WoW Token. Now, obviously, they're collecting a $5 premium, so for every month of WoW subscription time that is facilitated through WoW Token, you've got an extra $5 for Blizzard, right? Now, this is something that it was done in the MMO WildStar. I think they called it Cred. And this was pioneered by EVE Online with the pilot license extension, Plex. And it was just that way in EVE. You buy a Plex, and now, the funny thing with EVE, though, is Plex was a literal item in-game. So if you had, let's just say, $5,000 worth of Plex in the hold of your spaceship, and you wanted to sell it at Jita for some reason, and you took a very, very, risky trade route, and your ship got blown up, you see all that money? Gone. Quite hilarious. Now, for a lot of people, though, this is Blizzard really going back on something. A while ago, we did a mini documentary on our Warcraft channel called Time is Money. And it is about how in the genre, we sort of started off, everyone's in an equal footing, right? If you were Big Jimmy multi-million-dollar man, you didn't have much of a leg up over anyone else in the game, unless you engaged in RMT. Was against the terms of service and all of that stuff. And for a lot of people, this is sort of a great purity in the game. And it is showing that you cannot take what you have outside of the game inside of the game. And for a lot, that just means that the game is a sort of uncorrupted, pure, beautiful space. And this is, I think, mechanically important to people. It is also emotionally important. Because with MMOs like this, it used to be that no matter who you were, what life you led, anything like that, when you went into World of Warcraft, you were just another player of World of Warcraft. This sort of great leveling out of things. That feeling that, no matter what it's like outside of the game world is pure and, it's safe and it's fair. So this is seen as a violation of that. Now, there are some differences from how things were back in the day. I think that are they're a little bit more pressing to this issue. For some of the fan backlash, it's obviously been there. The r/classic WoW subreddit have actually suspended Rule 4 for them, which is basically a rule saying, no talking about private servers. Obviously, if you're anywhere near World of Warcraft, you've probably had Ascension WoW, which is a private server, just straight up have advertisements in your Twitter feed, or maybe even in the front of a YouTube video, which has been quite interesting. Now, Blizzard did actually make a response. They said that they have not arrived at the decision lightly. As a development team, they were resistant to doing this. But they did frame this in the way of gold farmers and real money trading, and how these have become endemic through Classic. They know they can never eliminate it fully, they say, no matter how many bots they ban. They did say that they have a total number of account closures of basically 250,000, and World of Warcraft, now that's a total BNet ban closure, and then a total World of Warcraft account closure of 73,000. And they said they would rather provide a regulatory control that means that people have a safe internal option to purchase. So they're basically saying, look, we know half of you are buying gold, and it's all against terms of service. It's a crazy problem. It's not even an epidemic now. It's just endemic. It is part of how things are. We will give you the option, and we will make $5 for every time that option is used. Haha. Now, to a lot of WoW Classic players, they're like, oh, I see. You're going to monetize the solution of a symptom. You're going to get the fever down rather than solve the sickness, right? That's how a lot of people see this. Now, of course, from Blizzard's point of view, they don't want they don't want to have to deal with bots and stuff like that. That obviously costs them time and money. Evidently, though, it is a battle that they are losing. And what is, I think, less here in in our document that's collating all the official stuff, and I think more there for people's subjective experience of playing the game. RMT's massive. We talked about this in the context of TBC Classic. It continues to be massive in Wrath Classic, and it's for a number of reasons, because there was a thing that happened back in the day called a EPGP run, I believe that's what it's called, where basically gold was used, and basically when you're doing a run, whenever gear drops, people essentially bid gold for that gear. That gold goes into a pot, and then basically it's distributed equally between all the other people in the raid. I'm sure there's different permutations of doing it, but the idea of it is, like, we're going to get this run going, people will get loot, there will be gold that comes in from that loot, and people who do not get paid and do not get loot, they will get some gold. Right, so that's the broad thing. And what it does mean is that if you're coming in there as a high net worth player, a VIP, you can get the gear. So for a lot of people, this ends up being a way to buy gear. So what'll be very interesting then is to see how many gold a token is worth when it actually happens and when the market forces apply to it. So Blizzard, they say that Wrath's gameplay loop is no longer quite as gold-focused as Vanilla or the Burning Crusade, where you had like a higher cost of consumables. They say they realized the introduction of token wouldn't be a temptation for most regular players to buy to help support their usual everyday sort of gameplay activity. It is simply not impactful to the average player who logs in, raids a few days a week. Here's the real bit, with their guild, does a few dungeons and dailies, and then plays other games in between then. There's no friction in that player's experience that would tempt them to buy a token just to keep themselves afloat. If you want to buy a boost in-game with gold, or if you want to get a bunch of gear via an EPGP run of a raid, that's when the gold comes in. And that is the bit that gets to be monetized. And as much as they are framing this as solving a problem, ultimately, we all know that this exists for the $5, right? That additional premium that they get on every single World of Warcraft sub through this. So what is it ultimately? It's just them making this decision. It is them saying that time equals money, that they formally support that and that they want to monetize that. I agree with them. It's less egregious in Wrath than it is in the Burning Crusade or in Vanilla, but it's still not what Wrath was. It still isn't what Wrath was. And I even think about, there's, the Saronite bars or whatever that come from Icecrown Citadel. There's a bunch of money around those. You would wonder, I suppose, what all this economic activity would do. Will it cause inflation within the game? And if there is that inflation, will that mean that, average players who are kind of earning more average amounts of gold through the game, does it mean that they will be sort of priced out of some markets? You sort of have those thoughts. Because obviously, when it comes to botting and stuff like that, things are just more sophisticated these days. So that's the story there with WoW. Next, though, Nvidia, the 4060 Ti. Oh boy. Once again, we have Big Steve Burke from Gamers Nexus just... we need him like a top of horse with a large sword, because, hey, Gamers Nexus do incredible work, don't they? So, the 4060 range has came in. Obviously, the story of the 4090, 4080, 4070, the whole rebranding stuff that they did. I don't have to relitigate that with you guys. You know what's up. It's Nvidia. They've basically just been trying to increase their average sale price. And, they actually had a situation where their best value in terms of additional performance for dollar, it was coming from the 4090, not the 4080, because we live in a wacky, bizarre hell world. Anyhow, the 4060 range is coming out. This is what you would expect most people to be reasonably, able to afford. And it's really more of the same, with the added bonus that this is a device that will functionally be unable to meet the demands of many modern games. And that is because 8 gigabytes of VRAM means that a lot of higher-end games just won't really work that well. Because, this is supposed to be the economy 1080p card. Now, to say that the economy 1080p card is, still, okay, just starting at $289 USD, but, you're not really going to see anything that's not like, closer to 400 USD. Like, that's crazy when you think about what a console is doing, where consoles, even if it's upscaled to 4K, you probably have a native res of like 1440 that's being upscaled there. So this is all really quite rough. Our RRPs are still not really, you don't see these cards at RRP as often. The 4070 is sitting at, when you go into add-on board partners and what they're doing. The 4070 is at a price from retailers, though, that's not all that much higher. Overall here, what you're just seeing is an extension of their goal to increase their average sale price, where, the 4060 versus the 3060. The 4060 will be a bit more expensive than the 3060 was. They're just trying to increase that average sale price. But here's the deal, right? These cards are not real big, super happy future-proofing things. They're not, right? But what you're doing is you're getting into the Ada Lovelace architecture, and that means that you'll benefit from DLSS 3. And what Nvidia are essentially trying to do is they are trying to get their sort of platform architecture benefits, which, I'm fairly sure those are more just firmware locked. I don't know if there's any specific reason why a 3060 can't run DLSS 3 other than Nvidia said no. But anyway, they want people to move up so that quite a lot of their performance gains are being brought on by those Nvidia proprietary technologies. DLSS, from what I understand, is better than FSR and the other things. And when you have DLSS 3 plus a good implementation of Nvidia's reflex boost or whatever it's called, which is the thing that reduces your input latency, you end up actually having a fairly good experience. Now, if you're playing a game like Valorant, you obviously want no frame generation or any of that jazz going on. But for a lot of people who just want to play the latest AAA game, and maybe they're going to be having, less latency, with DLSS 3 and all that stuff on their PC than they would just going through a console and a TV anyway, so they're happy enough. That's really their goal. They want you to be sort of moated in by their technologies. They want a situation where if you spend $400 at, with a Radeon card at AMD, you're not going to get your frame generation DLSS. You're not going to get NVIDIA Boost, those additional things that kind of build a moat around NVIDIA's audience. And that is one of the reasons why you have just seen NVIDIA's market share be, just be completely fucking dominant. Now, the other side of this, their stock price has recently surged. Really surged. And it's all off the back of software and AI. So here we go, NVIDIA Corporation. Trading, if I just bring this back to like 5 days, you can actually see that the last time the market, I think they're about to open now, but last time markets were open, right, you're seeing NVIDIA trading about 300 USD. Now, though, they actually hit a peak of 386 USD in aftermarket trading. This is based off, I believe, them giving some future earnings guidance that was like, was it 40% higher than what the market expected? Anyway, it is just to say, one day, Jensen, he put on that badass leather jacket, and every day since then, Nvidia has been growing into his valuation. I think that's what's going on. Anyhow, it's also Studio Layoff May, which of course is following on from Studio Layoff April, and is a part of Studio Layoff 2023. We've had more layoffs going on, quite sad. So if you remember the game Crypt the Necrodancer, really good game, even to the point where it got some Nintendo money for a Hyrule. Kind of like a Hyrule expansion. But Brace Yourself Games have unfortunately had to lay off 20 people, which is about half of their total staff. Now, most recently, they put out Phantom Brigade. This was early access on the Epic Store, broadly positive reviews, hit a wider audience than on Steam. Perhaps not having the revenue tail that they hoped for. It is worth saying, though, that their upcoming game is, their upcoming games are smaller in scope, and they do have another Necrodancer game within that. The next thing, this is sad to me, Deck 9 Games, I've bantered a little bit with Stephen Frost, who's the game director on the Expanse game on Twitter. He's an ex-WoW guy. He said some, very kind, supportive words for the game that we put out. That's one of those things. I think we all work in the narrative game space, so we kind of have good opinions towards our own. And this was really sad to see. So Deck 9 Games have had to lay off 30 people. Most recently, they were known for games in the Life is Strange. The Life is Strange games. There's the very well-received Life is Strange True Colors. It had a great reception. There were quite messy remasters of the first two games. Those didn't go down as well. But their big thing is The Expanse, a Telltale series, which I believe is a prequel following Drummer. I love The Expanse. I am absolutely, very excited for that. And what we really saw with Deck 9, though, is, a lot of the narrative team leads voluntarily taking layoffs to avoid their team having to, which is really commendable. Now our next thing to move over to, and this is sad as well, moving over to Relic. Relic have sadly had to lay off 121 employees and restructure. Yeah, now they say that, because obviously they're owned by Sega, external factors are challenging the industry more than ever. This is to ensure maximum focus. Recently, they worked on Age of Empires 4, along with Xbox's World Edge studio, and also their own game, Company of Heroes 3. Now, the former is doing, fantastically. Everyone's very happy with Age of Empires. Unfortunately, though, Company of Heroes 3 is doing a bit less well. The critical reception initially was positive. The more dedicated fans of the series, it wasn't, not really as particularly positive. I think for a lot of people being compared to what they expected due to Company of Heroes 2. being a real excellent game. It's one of those things, maybe it needed more like time in the oven. And it's also one of those things where like I was interested in the campaigns that they were offering, especially that one that was giving you just a little smidge of grand strategy on top of it. I just never got around to buying the game. I saw the initial reviews and I thought to myself, okay, I'll buy this in like 6 months once a few patches are out. And now you're left in one of those situations where it's like, you know, did financial pressures mean they had to put that game out then? And now their long tail for that game is looking kind of bad because they didn't have the initial performance that they wanted. And, you know, now because I plan to buy it in 6 months, does that contribute to 121 people being laid off from the studio, which probably is not good for the future of Company of Heroes 3? It's one of those sad things. The whole market operates in feedback loops, doesn't it? Okay, finally then, we have Blizzard being fined for loot boxes in Diablo Immortal! Haha! Yeah, you know, this is one of the Blizzard L's I will cheer. So, yes, they have found themselves alongside Playon, which is a division of the Embracer Group, in the bad books of Peggy, who are a regulator. Right, this is for the crime of not detailing that Diablo Immortal and Hunt Showdown have loot boxes, and they have been punished $5,000. I mean, what? If this hit Bobby, maybe it would mean that... you know, when he's having his Michelin 3-star meal, he gets to have the champagne that's, you know, only a slightly worse vintage. But there you go. The fine has been applied. They're running away in terror. The system works. Have a great day, everybody. I hope you found today's episode to be entertaining. I sure have enjoyed presenting these stories to you. Have a great day. There's plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you next time.